Hi and good afternoon. Welcome. It's the day after match day. I am Shauna K. Lester. Okay, so we are going live on Instagram. I am Shauna K. Lester. I am the founder of Memorable Essay and the creator of the IMG Residency Match Application Accelerator, which is a premium program in which we help ambitious IMGs who are applying to the match. So we help you to put together the strongest possible application, high MCAT advice, so that you have the best possible odds of matching. So the day after match day, as I said at the start, and again, as I had said earlier in the week, huge congratulations to everyone who actually submitted an application to the match. It is not the easiest thing to do, so please be proud of yourself. Congratulations to you if you got exactly what you wanted, whether it's in the regular match or in the soap, huge congrats to you. And if you didn't get exactly what you wanted and you'll be reapplying to the match, congrats to you that you've actually applied before. And so this hopefully will be a much easier path for you to walk now that you know what to do. And it's okay if it takes more than one attempt, all right? So we are gonna have a conversation today about 7 things, right? That if your personal statement is not doing these 7 things, I can guarantee you that it's not memorable. I could tell you a bit about my background and why you should listen to me, why I actually know what I'm talking about, but I will assure you that having been in this admission space for over 20 years and having helped applicants apply to almost everything under the sun, including residency, and help them to do really well, that I do know what I'm talking about, so that we can just jump into the material. All right, so if your personal statement isn't doing these 7 things, it's probably not memorable, right? So we can kind of flip that on its head and talk about these 7 things that your personal statement must be doing in order to be memorable, right? The very first thing here is that your personal statement answers what was asked. And I know that this can be a little bit difficult when it comes to your residency personal statement because it's sort of open-ended, all right? It's even fair. I think if someone said to me, well, I don't know what's being asked of me, they're just all this space here, fill it with characters, I think that would be fair. But I will say to you that what is being asked of you is, why are you worthy of matching into this program? That is really the question that is being asked. Hi, Soren Jazz. And so, hi, Shania. And so in order to answer this question of why are you worthy of matching into the program, hey, Samantha, there are some other questions that I really am going to need you to answer. And hi, Queen Sanj. So in order to answer the question of why are you worthy of matching into the program, there are a couple of key questions that the personal statement must answer. And for people who say that they have no idea where to start and no idea what to do, I promise you, don't do this, do a bit more, but I promise you, if you literally just took the answers to these questions and put them one paragraph under the other, that you would have a start to your personal statement. So on number 1 of 7, we're talking about you actually answering what was asked of you. As somebody who's applying to the match, to answer what was asked of you, you need to answer these questions. Why do I want to match into this specialty? What are the strengths I bring to this specialty? Why do I need residency training? And who am I going to be in the future because of what I get through residency training? Each of those questions, you could talk for a full hour about them, so we won't. But just know that in order for you to answer what was asked when you are creating your residency match personal statement, you are going to have to answer those questions. If you haven't answered these questions, just don't even bother, right? Just delete the file. So the thing that I see, instead of people answering what was asked, I have that on the flip side of my post-it note, is that it says what's on your mind. Is this reading forward or backward? I don't know. Hopefully you can see it. But it says what's on your mind. It doesn't answer what was asked. It says what's on your mind. And what's normally on your mind as an applicant to the match, understandably so, is why you really want to match. And so that can turn into you, just making a case for why you want to match. And so it comes out as more of a cover letter and not a personal statement. There are very key differences between the two. And so you want to focus on answering these 4 questions and not just talking about how much it is your deepest longing and all of these things to match. All right. Number 2, it must make one clear point. That's number 2 of 7. what do we have sometimes instead of it making one clear point is that it says everything. And if you have a personal statement that says everything, it says nothing. It's like when you're talking with people who, and you know, I respect that people have different needs as well, but when you're talking sometimes with people who they say everything in one sentence, sometimes it can be hard for you as the listener to remember anything at all, right? Because everything was said. So what you want to make sure is that this personal statement makes one clear point. If it doesn't, it's probably not memorable. How can it make one clear point when you have multiple paragraphs, right? And each paragraph should have a point. That means that you need one overall main message. And we'll be talking about that more in the weeks to come, and it's what we do inside of our program here at Memorable Essay. But all of the paragraphs together, all of the answers to these questions together, it needs to be cohesive, and your personal statement needs to make one clear point. So far we have that it answers what was asked. If it doesn't, it's not memorable. That it makes one clear point. If it's making a point about everything, it's not memorable. And then number 3. This is so important for the match in particular, because although I keep saying that the personal statement is not a cover letter, this really is a job application process. And so you need in your personal statement to show how you are on the job, right? So if your personal statement does not use an anecdote, it is probably not memorable. And that should be the easiest one for everyone to remember, number 3 out of our 7. Because as human beings, we love a story and we remember story and we love anecdotes. And when we see each other, it's girl, remember when? Hey, remember when? Sir, remember when? You know, and then there goes the story. And, you know, good stories with good endings, or just rich stories with, you know, moving, definitive things that happen. They just, I don't know, they stick in our brains. Don't they stick in your brain? Well, they stick in my brain, right? So if your personal statement doesn't have an anecdote, and I would say a patient anecdote, since you're going to work with patients, it is probably not memorable. And the best anecdotes have some sensory information. So I actually had it as, it uses an anecdote with some sensory information. If you don't have a patient anecdote in your personal statement, chances are it's not memorable. And I just probably say off the bat, it's not memorable. And so what we have here is no patient anecdote. All right, so please let's have a patient anecdote, or don't bother. All right. So number 4, that it is authentic. And authentic in terms of it's communicating a passion for the specialty. So if your personal statement is not communicating a passion for the specialty that you're applying to, it's probably not memorable. And this one is very important, because this is on the criteria of what you need to fulfill in order to be interviewed. And of course, if you need that to be interviewed, you'll eventually need it to match, is that you need to have a commitment to the specialty. And I work with people who are applying to the match, or team works with people who are applying to the match. We've done that for 10 years. So you need to imagine someone who is working with everybody who's applying to their program. And they've been working with everybody for 20 years, 30 years, 35 years, reading thousands and thousands and thousands of personal statements. These people are not idiots. They can see right through you when you are describing something or talking about something to which you do not have a true commitment, right? Something that really is not close to you. So if your personal statement is not oozing in authenticity, I will use the word ooze. If it's not oozing in authenticity, it's probably not memorable, and it's also probably raising a couple eyebrows. So the opposite I have of that, I actually didn't even remember this, but this is so true, because I thought I would have said that the opposite is not sharing your story, but we're probably going to get to that later. But I have that it is vomiting your CV. I don't know if you can read this one. And those ones are really hard, right? I remember at the start of the Match 2023 cycle, I read this personal statement from someone who had not been successful in the match, but the CV was like killer, right? Like blowing everybody out of the water. And you're like, why, right? Then when I read the personal statement, it was quite robotic. And I say that respectfully because I told the person respectfully. I literally felt like I was reading about a robot. It was so dry. It was the CV. It was the CV in personal statement form. And it did not move me. And it also just kept, just sort of hitting me over the head, because I kept wondering, who is this person as an individual, right? Because the CV is not going to take care of the patient. The CV is not going to go the extra mile for a patient. So just who are you as a person? Like, when we take away all of these accolades that you're vomiting on me right now in this personal statement, who are you? What do you value? What do you stand for? What are your life experiences? What can I expect when I get to you, right? What can I expect from you when times get tough? That sort of thing. It needs to feel human, and it needs to feel authentic. It needs to feel like you have a commitment to what you're doing, and not that it's all about like the grades for you, or, you know, I think you get the point. And if you get the point, feel free to comment point if you can say point, or, you know, anything like that. So the fourth thing is that if it's not authentic, it's probably not memorable. Fifth thing is that if your personal statement doesn't have specific details, it's the same reason why we love story, because our mind remembers specific details, right? You need to tell people what was going on when certain things happened. Specificity in general, because I could talk about that for a long time and I won't. Specificity really is your friend. And if you are not speaking specific things, chances are you're not memorable. And I don't even have to flip the post-it around, because I remember this one because it's a pet peeve of mine, because it happens so often. I have always loved pediatrics. I have always loved the elderly. I guess the elderly, they're on my mind because of a couple of things. But I've always loved pediatrics. I've always loved the elderly. I've always loved solving puzzles. The I have always thing, it is the worst way to be non-specific. Because what happens with that normally is that you're cheating yourself out of sharing very rich experiences. Because when you say things like, I've always loved the sciences, or I've always, loved to talk to my patients to see what's going on, or I always love science and I always love helping people and I decided to marry the two, which is what everyone normally says. You have, okay, hey Shania, thank you, she got the point, right? You have cheated yourself out of sharing maybe like a really wonderful moment when that thing was born. Like, when was your love for sciences born? When was your love for people or for the elderly born? Like, and if it wasn't one thing, maybe it's not always one thing. If it wasn't one thing, you can choose one of the things, like the thing that, hey Lejeune, the thing that stands out the most. You can choose that one thing. Or maybe you can do sort of like a carousel, the carousel that goes around at like fairs and stuff. Maybe you can expose us to all three of the things in a carousel kind of way, meaning that you don't tell all the stories, but you give us a glimpse of each thing. But anyway, when you say something like I have always, which is the point, you cheat us out of learning about one of the most definitive moments in that path. Hey, all right? So please stay away from I have always and I have never, and have some specific details, specifically those origin stories around when things started, because they're really rich. If your personal statement doesn't have an unforgettable start, and I know I always say that you don't need to be an excellent writer to have a memorable personal statement, but for the start, let me just say and, not but. And, however, I'm saying but, right? But for the start, you really want to have one of those strong starts. And you don't have to be, again, Toni Morrison or any other epic writer who you admire. But let me just say that you're going to have to spend some time on your start. Because the start it's like the hook. It's like if you're watching a movie or something, if those first 5 minutes are lame, you're going to take up your bag and go home. Or I'd go and sleep, right? There are better things you have to do, like sleep. So if your personal statement has a really boring start, it's hard to come back from that. If it has a sloppy start, I would say you're not going to come back from that, because it's, where do you think you are and what is this? This is an important process. So of course it has to be tidy, grammar tight and all of that stuff. But what you're going for is an unforgettable start. When you have that truly powerful, memorable, unforgettable start, you're in it. You're in it to win it. Like, people are going to think of you. They're going to remember you. Chances are they're going to want to talk about you. And of course, you're not, and I do mean talk about, not just talk to you, but talk about you with their colleagues. Of course, you then have the body of the personal statement, and that's a whole other thing. But you really want to go for that power start. I guess you can think of it again like sprinting. If you love sprinting, which if you're a Caribbean, you probably do. If you're sloppy out of the blocks, race is probably over, or you're probably not going to get the time that you wanted. So opposite of an unforgettable start are quotes, and I love quotes. They're quotes, you can't see them, but they're quotes all over this wall. They're quotes on my computer. But the start of your personal statement is not the place for quotes normally, because they hardly make for those very unforgettable starts, because so many people use quotes and so many people love the same quotes, I guess, in the age of the internet. And quite frankly, if you read a lot of personal statements, you get tired of reading quotes, right? So instead of having that unforgettable start, you have some quotes, or you have sentences that run for the hills, long sentences, run-on sentences that are just, you have to stop as the reader and read the sentence 5 times because it's that long and it runs on that much. And we hate that as readers, right? Everybody hates it because you're confused. And in terms of somebody who is, heading up a program, they have clinical responsibilities, they have a personal life, they probably have personal goals that are bigger even than the program that they're leading. You're wasting their time. If I'm going to be frank, you're wasting their time with a sloppy opening, right? So if your personal statement has that kind of sloppy opening, the sentences that are running for the mountains and the quotes that everybody and their mother loves, I'm going to bet that your personal statement is not memorable. All right, so I've spoken a lot, and number 7 is, coming up. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to, drop them there. But I'm going to talk about number 7, and I think I'm at 7. And so number 7 is very dear to me, and I've been talking about it. Hey, Peter Gay, I've been talking about it for as long as Memorable Essay has existed, which is a very long time in some form, with IMG's 10 years in particular. And I'll talk about it every single year because it is just the truth, right? If your personal statement doesn't tell your story, it's probably not memorable. And that is because you are the most memorable part of this whole process. There are things that you have to do in terms of, checking the box. You have to do your exams, all the things because you're doing them. Well, hopefully you know all the things and somebody's guiding you to do all the most effective things, the things that will give you the most leverage. I don't think there are any wrong things, but there's some things that will give you the better leverage than other things. So hopefully you know those things and you're doing those things. But telling your story, if your personal statement isn't doing that for you, chances are it's not memorable. Meaning that if you're going for generic things, you're in a profession where people are experiencing a lot of the same things. They're not experiencing them in a lot of the same ways, probably, depending on their setting and the particular hospital and their values and so on. But if you think about it in admissions, that sort of thing, like as a program director, if you threw a fishing net out and you took 50 applications from one region, not all the different regions. So we're not going like Southeast Asia, Caribbean, Africa. Let's just do like the Caribbean today, right? Like today, we're just going to throw a net out to all our applicants from the Caribbean. You're probably going to get a lot of people with a lot of the same values, like same religious, upbringing. You might get a few Muslims, maybe get a few Hindus. You're going to get a lot of Christians, right? So people probably have the same religious upbringing. Their family taught them a lot of the same things: kindness, sharing, empathy, forgiveness, going the extra mile, making your work more than about you. You're going to get a lot of that, right? You're probably going to get a lot of people who are working in very similar healthcare settings, like, limited resources, seeing patients with a lot of the same challenges, where they believe more in like ancient or local spiritual traditions than they do in medicine. There's probably a lot of white coat fare, although it's not called white coat fare in the Caribbean, but there is fare of hospitals and doctors and clinics because people see them as where, especially in very, very, very deeply rural areas across the Caribbean, they see these places as where people go to die, right? So whenever you're talking about any of those things, like, it's great and it's rich and it's wonderful content, but not until you start talking about the story of your home, your mind, your heart, your life, are you going to be memorable? It is just not, it's not possible. It's exactly why we're all so different on earth, right? Because if we were all living the same life, it wouldn't make any sense. So the most richness, and I digress, is going to come from your story. And if your personal statement is not telling your story in some way, shape, or form, all of the personal statement will not tell your story, because we can go back to number 1 in the post-it pile of being memorable is that it answers what was asked. And if you came late, the questions within answers what was asked for your residency personal statement is why you want to match into the specialty, and I'd probably even change that want into a need. What are the strengths that I bring to this specialty? And within strengths, you're going to want to have unique strengths, right? Why do I need residency training? And the best kind of answers to those questions go beyond you to like other people, and so on and so forth. And what will I be like in the future as a physician because of residency training? So always, paint that future vision to answer number one. That's what your personal statement is doing. But within doing that, to be memorable, you have to tell your story. And if you haven't told your story, I'm going to tell you that you are quite likely not a memorable applicant. And of course, you want to be memorable to get that interview and to match. And I think you also want to be memorable because you want to tell your story. And as I keep saying, it's a skill you want to have because you're going to do this so many more times, right? Well, maybe when you apply for some job or fellowship, or if you want to be like head of some hospital system, this is like a muscle that you need to have. You need to know how to put yourself together and how to tell your story, because we remember a lot of people, I'm sure, by their stories. And so the program will remember you too by your own story. And again, if it helps you, as I said, think of like just throwing a fishing net out to a reach, and you're going to get so many overlaps. And then add the specialty, a lot more overlaps. And the only point of distinction is really going to start coming when you're telling your story. So happy Saturday. If you were here and you already matched, congrats, regardless of where, when, how, main, match, soap, all these things, regardless of where you're going. Yes, to medical directorship. I claim it for you if that's what you want. I don't even know if I should call out your name, but maybe they can see if you want that. And people want so many more things, right? You want to head up WHO, and you want to do this and that, and do all the things that you want to do. But for you, you're going to find that you'll get a leg up on this process as you go through things, even when you just meet people on the plane and the elevator, if you tell your story. All right, so uncover the story and tell it, and we'll talk again. Thanks so much for being here. Take care. Have a good weekend. Bye.